Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Thank you guys for joining us again. Our guest today has been highly requested and someone I've been looking forward to having on personally since starting this show. And she is a 3-time Bikini Pro champion who has stepped on the prestigious Olympia and Arnold stages 2 times, with 11th place being her top finish. She is prepping for a return to the stage after having her baby, and she works as a logistics senior manager. She's an Army veteran and holds a master's degree from West Point. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth Yisrael. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for joining us. And I got to ask you a question I ask everybody, which is there a ritual or something you think about or do right before your heel hits the stage?
So, one thing that I noticed back around when I got my pro card was that when I was watching a show, I would always kind of see who the winner was. Like when they walked out, there was just something about them, like your eyes were just drawn to them. And so when I'm standing backstage getting ready to go on, I just try to envision that feeling of like seeing myself as the winner and like drawing the judges' eyes to me. So that's like what I'm thinking right before I step out.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Do you feel like that makes a difference in how you present yourself?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's just like trying to have that like inner spark or whatever that, that confidence that you can't really, just get from practicing the posing. It's like something extra. Yeah.
Totally. It's like an energy you have to tap into.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so, a lot of people, when I told them that I was going to be interviewing you, they're like, oh my gosh, I love her and she's so busy and she just prioritizes everything, and they really wanted to know more about that. So I'm excited to ask you some of their questions, but I would love to know more about your background in the military. What inspired you to join the Army?
So it's a really roundabout way how it happened, actually. My mom, a single mom, didn't really have a lot of money for college, and I was looking at some very expensive schools, ones that were, like $30,000 a year, and I was just going in shock figuring out how I would pay for it. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking about ROTC scholarship, and then that, the schools I was looking at that still didn't cover room and board, which is, like a good $5,000 a year or something. So then I just heard about West Point, and that like everything is included there and it's a good school. And I mean, I was always interested in like serving the country, but honestly, it was a lot more about paying for my education at first. Mm-hmm. And I ended up, with a lot of pride in what I was doing. And I stayed past my initial commitment, which was 5 years in the military, and did 8 years actually before getting out.
Wow. What inspired you to stay those extra 2 or
it was really the people I was leading. Like, so I had the largest group of soldiers that I led was about 110. Wow. I was a company commander, and really just being able to work with those people every day. A lot of them were really young, and help them through, like, you're kind of their advisor, not just like their boss. You deal with helping them with financial issues, everything in their personal life, their physical fitness, as well as what they're doing for work. And it was really rewarding, and I made some really good connections with them. And there was actually one of them who sought me out later to let me know that he named his son after Israel, after my last name.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. Wow.
Yeah, so it was really the people that I worked with that inspired me to stay in the military.
That's incredible. I love that story. And of course, you got to lead this huge group. I mean, to me, it seems like really big and it's huge, and it's a lot of people that are relying on your position as well. So I imagine that you maybe learned a lot throughout that experience. Was there anything that you learned from being in the military that you now apply or maybe take with you in other areas of your life?
So much. I mean, everything from time management to discipline, just setting a good example. Yeah, I mean, I guess those are probably the top 3 things.
Oh my gosh, and all of them so important for competing and also motherhood.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so wait, you started as a gymnast too, right? And then you cheered at West Point.
Yes. Yeah. So I stopped gymnastics at the beginning of my senior year in high school. And I was actually taking a physical fitness test for West Point when the track coach helped administer it, and he saw me doing the sprints and a standing long jump that was part of the test. And he was like, "Oh, you should join the track team." So I did that my senior year in the spring. And then I did track my freshman year at West Point, and then thought of doing cheerleading after that.
Wow, that's awesome. And was that because of your gymnastics background?
Yeah. So yeah, gymnastics definitely was the reason I was able to do it. I was not really a natural at the dance or anything.
I'm definitely not a dancer myself, which is funny because it's made posing really interesting. So when you look back then at that experience, you said time management, discipline, and being a good example really stand out to you. What are some of the things you do? Because like I said earlier, you do a really great job of prioritizing and managing so many different things in your life. And I love that you walk the walk when it comes to doing those things. You prioritize your competition goals. You also prioritize other things in your life. And you've talked about how you've not sacrificed progression in other areas of your life for competing, and yet you've still achieved a lot in this area. So what are some things that you do to manage your time well, or to incorporate discipline into your daily schedule?
I mean, so yeah, it actually all comes down to the schedule for me. I have my day scheduled out literally from when I wake up at 4 a.m. till I go to bed at night. I write out on either just in a note in my notebook or in my actual Outlook calendar, when I'm doing my cardio, when I'm stretching, when I'm taking care of my daughter Madison, when I'm every hour at work, even tasks that I have to do in addition to the meetings are, in the calendar. So yeah, everything is on my daily schedule. And if there's things I need to do, grocery shop or whatever, I will put that in my calendar for which day of the week I'm doing it. So it's not an emergency that takes over when I need to be training or something.
Oh my gosh, I love that, because that shows that if you really make it a commitment and you understand the necessary steps in the process and you just plug it into your calendar, you plug it into your schedule, then it's less likely to feel like something you can't manage.
Exactly. Yeah. If I'm oh my gosh, I have so much I have to do this week to clean up around the house or whatever it is, then that'll just overwhelm me versus being okay, today I'm going to do this, tomorrow I'm going to do that. And then I know it'll all get done eventually.
Totally. I love that. I'm the same way with scheduling everything to a T, and it keeps me on track. And it also makes me feel really accomplished too.
Right.
So you plan everything out and you get it all in your calendar. And there was something you mentioned too, which is it's from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. So what happens if, has this been more difficult with Madison now, or has it been just as important? Has it been hard to manage?
Honestly, maybe she's just really an easy baby, but so I do have a nanny while I'm working during the day. So that helps. But the time that she's awake and the nanny's not here, it's 100% whatever she needs. So I'm doing my cardio before she wakes up. I'm, doing anything else that I want to at night, after she goes to sleep. And for example, right now we're doing this podcast because she's already asleep. I wouldn't be doing it when she's awake. So yeah, the time that she's awake and my nanny isn't there, then it's 100% her time. So yeah, anything that comes up, it doesn't really matter.
That's awesome. So do you feel like it was pretty easy then for you to transition into motherhood, given you were already so diligent with your time?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I just told myself not to feel bad, if I had to take an hour, so at first I wasn't working. It was just me with her all the time. Like the first 10 weeks postpartum, I was like, I'm not going to feel bad to leave for an hour in the day to go to the gym and let her dad watch her. So
Yeah.
it wasn't that bad.
I love that. And why was that something like you didn't feel bad about, or how was that something like you committed to? Like what drove that?
Well, I mean, I know so many women have experienced postpartum depression, and I think it's because they feel like they have to do everything themselves and put too much pressure on themselves as part of it. I mean, I know there's a lot of other hormonal things that go into it, but I didn't want to like not feel like I was myself either, because that wasn't going to help me be a good mother.
Yes, totally. And then you went straight into competition prep, right?
Not straight into it. So like the 10 weeks when I wasn't working, like postpartum, I wasn't in prep whatsoever. I just was, trying to be healthy, get back to working out and everything, and focus on just taking care of her. I mean, I think I started training like 2 weeks after I gave birth, but I mean, it was just, I was going to the gym and eating healthy. But yeah, so about 10 or 12 weeks after I started prep. Yeah.
Okay. And what was that like progressing back into training?
So when I first started training, it was so a lot of women don't start until 6 weeks postpartum, but I actually had to see the doctor a couple times right after, because I was having I had to see a lactation consultant, and it was at my OB, and they were like, yeah, go ahead and start training. But anyway, so I started just really carefully because I knew my core wasn't very strong yet, so I was doing a lot of isolation exercises, and it took me about 8 weeks to feel like my core was as strong as usual. But other than that, everything else felt fine when I was training, like from the get-go, because I had trained all the way up until the day I gave birth, actually.
Wow, that's amazing. Did you have any symptoms throughout pregnancy? I don't even know if symptoms is the right word, but did you have any
I
change?
didn't have any nausea or food aversions or anything. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't too bad. Like at the end, I felt like I couldn't get any bigger, and and felt like huge. Like I was like, how is she still fitting in my belly? But no, other than that, it was really smooth.
So how did you actually monitor your training and nutrition or your macros throughout pregnancy?
So I actually started back with Bombshell Fitness when almost as soon as I got pregnant, because they had a plan called Baby Fit Plan.
Oh.
So I was sent like a meal plan, but I also got the macros to go along with it, and ended up just tracking my macros. And I tracked, I'd say, as carefully as I would like in an off season, usually, weighing stuff out and everything. But I also, if I was, if I was hungry and wasn't supposed to have any macros left, I would still have something extra, just because I would kind of do that in the off season anyway, because if I'm hungry, there's probably a reason. So yeah, I did follow that plan, and it was pretty, I think, standard according to like the guidelines for what you're supposed to do for pregnancy, like not really increase your calories in the first trimester, increase by a few hundred in the second, and like maybe 500 or 600 in the third. Mm-hmm. And yeah, training, there were some exercises that I had to modify, because you couldn't like lay on your stomach, but pretty much I trained as usual, I would say.
And you mentioned that you treated it almost like an off season. And so now I'm curious, what does your off season look like compared to a prep?
So it really, I mean, I'm doing less cardio, and I'm not trying to lose weight, but like I really eat most of the same foods, and I just eat more of them. I'm not like a person who even really wants a dessert or anything, and I usually do just track macros, not follow a meal plan, so I could fit it in. But then I just know that if I have like a 600 calorie dessert, then I'm probably actually going to be hungry later, as opposed to if I had 600 calories of like steak and rice.
Totally. And so why do you track macros? Why do you choose macros over meal plans?
The main reason is actually because I like to order my food from like Icon Meals or Mega Fit Meals. And it's like really hard to have a coach like make a meal plan that fits like the foods that I could order and like the portion sizes exactly that they do. So
Yes, totally. Okay, that makes sense then. And so you, of course, went throughout your pregnancy. You trained every single day up until the end, which is awesome. But something that stood out to me that I read from your Instagram was that you actually dropped your sponsorships. And I don't think a lot of athletes would do that. And so I'm curious, like, what inspired you to drop the sponsorships, and have any of them reached back out since you dropped them?
So I actually did that before I competed in the 2018 Olympia. I knew that I was going to take time off. I hadn't like announced it or anything. I just knew from how I felt. And I was like, I really don't want, the number one thing is I really didn't want like the responsibility of trying to promote something when I was not competing and feeling like I had to stay involved and posting the right things for them. So that was like the number one thing. And then second was honestly, like, I didn't have like the kind of sponsorships that really made it worthwhile to me to have a sponsorship. Like there were more like post something and we'll give you some free things, and it just wasn't like the right trade-off for me, I would say, to feel like obligated, because I really like to post something when I'm feel like genuinely like, oh, I really want to tell everyone about this, not like, oh, I need to make a weekly post about whatever.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I totally hear you there. I think that says a lot about like your genuine character and commitment to, providing value and insight into what you're actually using and actually working with. And I could see why then if you're not into prep and you were mostly taking something or wearing something and it was only during preps that you would normally do that, it's like, well, now it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you did that, you said that was actually before you competed in 2018 Olympia. You knew you wanted to take time off. What was making you want to take a step back for a bit?
It was a couple things. So I had competed so much in 2017, actually 2016 too. Last couple of years before that, I'd competed so much. And my last show in 2017 was like the end of October. And then I was competing again in 2018 at the beginning of March at the Arnold. So it was another super short off season, ended up competing some more. So I was just pretty burnt out and didn't like make the improvements I necessarily wanted to. And so I would have loved to be able to take like a decent length of off season and actually improve, but the Olympia points system changed, and I knew we were going to have to be competing like all year to get points to qualify for the Olympia, as opposed to just competing a couple times, maybe if you look great and winning a show. So I was like, this is just not lining up really well for me to be able to take a good off season and then compete and still qualify for the Olympia, which was my goal. And so I knew I wanted to have a baby. We just thought we were going to wait like another year and compete for another year. But I was like, maybe it'd be better to do now and then come back later if I want to.
Wow, that's awesome. I think that's really cool that you were able to step back and like see that you needed a break and you want to improve. Do you feel like you made improvements in pregnancy? I'm always curious, like if that ever happens to women, if they feel like, well, I gained muscle, or maybe I feel better because I took this time. Like, how did you feel?
I don't think I gained muscle, but I don't think I lost it either. My metabolism was definitely in a better spot. And I just felt like healthier in general. So, I mean, I think it was good for my health and for my like mental well-being to be like really ready to prep again. And I don't think I lost any muscle either. So
Totally. So yeah, I remember when you posted that photo, I was like, oh my gosh, like she looks so amazing. Yeah, you look like you didn't miss a beat.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome, of course. And so now, like, are you getting ready to compete in 2020 so you can qualify for the Olympia?
So I originally was hoping to compete in May. And then I realized all the shows were going to be canceled. And so I stopped prep actually before they announced they were canceled. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to stop right now and figure out a new plan.
Totally.
And then I was considering competing again to try to qualify for 2020 a little bit later on. But just talked to my coach, and we decided to wait until like after the October 18th cutoff to compete for the 2021 Olympia.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so I'll compete like the end of October instead.
And was that just because of uncertainty with shows, or?
So I just think that I feel really good about how things are going with how I'm improving now. And I think I have a really good chance of, if I bring my best, doing well for the 2021 Olympia. I just don't want to start competing like too early and then burn out and, ruin my chances for next year necessarily. So
Totally.
Yeah.
Like keeping the long game in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you ever have like fears come up or any concerns like, oh, I've taken like X amount of time off, are they gonna remember me, or what's it gonna be like?
Well, yeah, at this point in time, like I've already taken almost 2 years off, so like an extra couple months, whatever.
Yes.
I'll definitely be back on stage in October, but yeah.
Which show are you planning on doing if you're able to share?
Well, okay, there's one in California, I think October 23rd. I was just looking at the list. I know I want to do Iowa Pro November 7th.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I don't know. I'll see if other ones change around in October too, but because I think some have been like canceled or rescheduled and just haven't been put on the schedule yet in their new date. So we'll see.
Yes. I think Battle in the Desert, the Spectrum show was moved to October. That's when I was planning on doing. Yeah, in April. But I'm totally on the same page with you with taking the time off, and then like Corona hit and I was like, dang it, like now I've been off even longer, but I felt like it was really a blessing, like you said too, because you focus on the improvements you're making and you're feeling really good, and you said your metabolism even got in a better place, so that's awesome. Like it can only go up from there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I just feel like, okay, I might as well just start with the fresh new season instead of coming in at like the tail end of this one. So
yes, especially because you had already been like prepping, and then you're like, I'm gonna have to extend this prep all the way through.
Yeah,
totally. So you want to get on the Olympia and the Arnold stage again then?
Definitely the Olympia stage. Maybe the Arnold stage, I don't know. to be honest, the Arnold, like it depends, I guess, when I compete, because it was actually just like I've always competed like late in the fall, and then having that short break and competing early in the spring was not the best idea. So definitely the Olympia stage though.
That's awesome. And do you notice a difference in the experience with both? Because I've talked to some other girls on here about that, and I'd love to hear your take on it.
I mean, it was a completely different experience, I think, just because the Arnold had the Olympia, there were probably about twice as many competitors both times I competed there. And at the Arnold, there were under 20. I don't know, probably about like 18 both times I did. So yeah, it was a lot smaller. And it felt just like slightly more exclusive than the Olympia did. It was actually like my first big stage that I stepped on. It was my third pro show, actually, I think was.
Wow.
Was it my third? Oh no, it was my fourth. Yeah, never mind.
That's amazing.
But yeah, so yeah, I don't know. And I guess, yeah, both of the shows really, like, you just feel like really proud to be there, and like everyone is just, happy that they're even there. And I think that's something that like some people who so after I competed at the 2018 Olympia, there were some people who were like, oh, you're just quitting because you didn't place as well as you did last year, didn't do as well as you thought you would. I was like, oh my gosh, like everyone who competed at the Olympia is pretty much just happy that they were qualified to compete there.
Totally. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. You're like, I just need a break. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
So looking back on your experiences, what was your journey to even competing like? Like, how did you even get into the competition world?
It was pretty random, actually. I was working out at a gym, and there was CrossFit was like kind of getting bigger. Then this was like in 2012, and they had like it was not a CrossFit gym, it was a regular gym. They had like a sort of CrossFit-ish team, and I was doing that. And then one of the other trainers at the gym, who sometimes did the classes with me, she decided to do a competition, and I think she placed like third or something. I was like, she did that. That looks kind of fun. Like, I kind of look like her. I should try it. So like 8 weeks out from a show, I decided I'm gonna do it. And I'd never actually been to one. I just saw like her pictures on Facebook. And I don't know if, I guess YouTube was probably around then, but I didn't watch any videos. I just saw photos. So I picked the bikini category because I thought figure looked huge. And
what year was this?
2012.
Okay. Dang.
And they weren't even huge, but I was like, my shoulders don't look like that. I think I'm going to do bikini. And yeah, so I ended up getting someone to help me with posing, for that show. And I guess that posing coach thought I was going to do well. So he told me I was part of his team then, and gave me a team warm up the day before the show. And then I won the overall. And so he was like, yeah, she's on my team.
Of course. That was awesome. So you had a great experience then?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I loved it. And so my husband, we weren't married then. We were just, I don't think we were even engaged yet. Maybe we were. I don't think so, though. I think we're just dating. And so he was living across the country from me, and he didn't get to see my first show. So he was flying out in a couple weeks, and I did another show so he could watch me compete at that
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And how'd you do at that one?
I won the overall at that one, too.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So then,
then I didn't know about nationals, but everyone was like, oh, you need to go to nationals, which was in a couple weeks after that. So then I did that, and I placed last call out probably.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I wore a pink suit. I had did my own hair and makeup, just, kind of looked a mess basically.
And then you came back and did another national show.
So yeah, then that was MPC nationals. And then I did junior USA's the next spring, and I got 5th at that one. Yeah.
So you did did you do 3 national shows before you got your pro card?
Oh my God, no, I did so many more.
Okay.
I placed top 5 and 7 national shows by the time I got my pro card.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I love stories like this because it's a great reminder that, everyone has to go through that process of the road to pro, right? The amateur competing. So what was that like for you to go from overall wins at your first 2 shows to then just fighting to break break out of top 5 and into top 3 even at a national show?
I mean, so a lot of it really was I just didn't have really great guidance on what the judges were looking for, and I had a hard time seeing it when I looked in the pictures and stuff, because I would just look at the physiques, not the overall presentation. And that's a lot of what I was lacking, was everything from the posing to the polished look in the hair and makeup and suit. And so I had to really get someone to help me with those details, and also just learn to be more critical of myself and not just look at what the good things were in my physique, and focus on what I could improve.
Yeah. And so when you started did you start getting like more guidance from a different coach? Like how did you start to learn what was necessary to actually bring that look or bring that presentation?
Yeah, so the year that I turned pro, I actually joined Bombshell Fitness, and they used to be like really huge, excuse me, on like making pros and everything. There were a ton of pros from them, and they kind of, I guess they really don't have like a lot of pros left now, but they are really good at the whole presentation factor. And my coach now with them is actually, she competed with me at the 2017 Olympia, Asia Mendoza.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of funny. But yeah, she has like seriously helped my posing so much.
So are you excited to show that?
Yeah. And I mean, it's not even like, I was always fine with being like fluid in the presentation, and I'm never going to be a really sassy person, but she's helped me like with the angles a lot, which was, I think, really holding me back.
What angles were holding you back, do you feel like that you needed to work on?
Like my front pose and like everything. So she had like in my back pose, I would kind of pull my shoulders back and like pinch them together, and my back wasn't looking wide and my rear delts weren't popping. So she had me like move the way my arms are in my back pose. In the front pose, she actually had me start stretching every day so that I can twist my upper body more.
Wow.
Because it wasn't like showing as much width. And then I was also like rolling my shoulder backwards in my front pose, which made them look less round. So yeah, just little details.
I love that. And have you noticed like a big difference in how your physique looks because of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not in contest shape now, but when I pose the two different ways, I can completely see a difference.
Yes, and I love that you just said contest shape, because you had a post one time that was talking about like the differences between like getting stage lean, being regular lifestyle lean, and then there's competition day conditioning, and how it's uncomfortable to get to stage lean. So like what changes for you from being the lifestyle lean to then competition day conditioning? Like what are some of the processes or things you go through and endure and commit to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't ever go like super low carb. The percentages of my macros don't change much. It's like the number of calories I'm taking in just decrease in general, but I usually keep the same kind of macro ratios. I don't know if that's typical or not. I think a lot of people do tend to cut their carbs more. And I do more cardio, but I don't do like 2 hours, probably average like 45 or 50 minutes to get stage lean. The most I ever did for like 1 week was an hour and a half. But yeah, it's mainly just reducing the calories.
Totally. And do you feel like do you usually feel good? Like how do you maintain your health as a priority during a prep?
I mean, by the time I'm like 5 weeks out, I usually don't feel great. But I always do, and I've like focused on this more recently, was making sure to take vitamins, including like fish oil, D3, like all kinds of stuff, just to support my immune system and my health in general. And taking 5-HTP, which is really good for your mood, and it has melatonin in it, and theanine. It's what is it called? Tranquil sleep before I go to bed.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so just stuff to help me feel better and stay healthy.
Totally. It's so important to be so preemptive in a prep too, like knowing like, all right, my body's depleting. I'm probably at higher risk for getting sick. And usually, at least I know for me at my very, very leanest, I like got sick as a dog the week after. Like it was finally like all the stress like was lifted, and then suddenly my body was like, I'm putting you to sleep, you gotta rest. And I got super sick. And so it's like I could have done better at being preemptive to prevent that for sure. So looking at your prep now versus your previous prep. So before, and obviously you're not in prep right this moment, but when you were in prep, we had one of the girls ask if there's been any key differences between your prep post baby compared to other preps.
Let's see, the biggest thing actually was, I think I already just mentioned, it was actually the stretching for posing. Like I was actually really, really tight after I had the baby. Like my back was, when I started using a lacrosse ball to like roll it out, it felt like I was being stabbed with a knife. So that was like in my lats and like rib area. So I don't know if it was from the baby or if I was always like that. And I just didn't ever really, try to take care of it. So I didn't notice, but yeah, so doing that to improve my posing was like one of the big things. And my coach like told me to do it every single day. Stretch, do mobility, and like foam roll, use the lacrosse ball. Yeah, everything else has really been the same. Like I would say, I feel honestly like right now, I feel I wouldn't know there was any difference between my body before or after I had the baby. Like I wouldn't realize it. So
wow. And so right now you're in more of like an improvement phase.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. One of the girls has this really fun question that we like asking on here, which is that if you could only pick one exercise to do for the rest of your life for glutes, one for hamstrings, and then one for shoulders, what would you pick for each of those?
Glutes. So I actually, during this time that I was not able to work out in the gym, I bought this hip thrust machine called, oh gosh, I can't, Booty Sprout. That's it. So it's like it's a machine, but it has some really thick bands that you use with it. So it gives like a couple 100 pounds resistance. And so that machine has been amazing. But yeah, any hip thrust, I would say, but I prefer machines to barbells, and that is amazing. It's as good as anything I've had in the gym.
That's awesome.
Yeah. For shoulders, I love a lateral raise machine, actually.
Oh, with bent arms or straight?
The bent arms one. Yeah. And the other was hamstrings.
Yes.
So I personally try not to do too much to develop my hamstrings. So my favorite exercise might be different than what people who are trying to grow their hamstrings are, but I like the seated hamstring curl the most.
And do you usually do that like lean forward or lean back, just so you're, like the normal position? Do you do anything?
Just the normal position. And I like that one because I can feel it more like in the upper hamstring area versus like lower, and I don't want my lower to get too thick and meaty looking.
Yes. Is that feedback you've gotten before?
No, but I could just see that they're pretty big.
Yeah.
They pop out like as much as my glutes if I let them grow.
That's crazy. Are your quads that way too? Like is your whole leg like that, or is it just your hamstrings?
No, it's actually my hamstring. Like my hamstrings and my calves and my triceps, like the whole back side of that is like naturally huge.
That's hilarious. I love it. Yeah, definitely for me it's the quads. I've got to be a little careful with that just because I played volleyball for so long. I feel like it just responds so well. But anyway, I appreciate you sharing that. And you mentioned your husband earlier. You said he wasn't your husband at the time, but he flew out to see you compete at your second show. And how did he have to make much of an adjustment to this new lifestyle, or were you, you said you were already training CrossFit or at the gym. So was that a transition for your guys' relationship?
No, it wasn't a huge adjustment. I think the main one at first was like us going out to eat less. But yeah, what I ate at home wasn't like a big deal, but yeah, me going out to eat less was like, I think a little bit of a disappointment to him.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then how do you now maintain, or how did you learn to maintain a healthy relationship with your husband when balancing all these different areas of your life?
I don't think it really took away any time that I spent with him. I think it's more just finding other activities to do together, instead of eating, something else fun that we can do. So yeah, I mean, I've always had hobbies and never been like a person to just, spend all my time with him or expect him to like entertain me all the time or vice versa. So, and
That's
I think
good.
he appreciates that. So yeah, it hasn't really been difficult.
Totally. And so earlier we talked about how like you have pursued other things outside of competing and how it's something I really admire about you and know a lot of other people do too. What are some of those things that you're glad you went after and still pursued alongside your competition career? Like what are some of those things maybe within your work career or other areas of life that you're glad you went after?
Yeah, so in 2018, I actually moved out to Minneapolis to work at Target headquarters because I wanted to take a promotion at my work. So that was the year that I also was competing a ton and kind of, it was difficult. But I'm glad that I did it. Like, I would not be nearly as happy or fulfilled in my career if I had stayed where I was working before. And so it was a good choice for me, even though probably for competing, it wasn't necessarily like the easiest or best choice for me to make.
How was it, like, how did it impact your competing?
I mean, we had a house to sell. I was moving, so my husband like stayed out there in Washington State where we lived for 5 or 6 months, like while I moved
Wow.
on. It was, just kind of like stressful. So
That's crazy. But you went for it and it's brought you more fulfillment then and now, I'm assuming?
yeah, definitely. I'm really happy. And so we're actually moving back to the West Coast next week. The movers are
Wow.
coming. Yeah, the movers are coming tomorrow. But I have the opportunity now that I've worked here at headquarters for a couple of years to continue to work for Target headquarters from home remotely, like
Oh my
permanently now.
gosh.
So, I mean, it ended up being like, like I proved myself to them. I did a good job and they're letting me work from where I want, which will be even easier. So
That's awesome. So you want to
yeah.
move back to the West Coast then, and is that because
Yeah,
you
it's
like
actually for an
it?
opportunity for my husband. Yeah.
Oh, really? So what is he doing?
So he was an account manager for a software company and he got promoted to regional sales director. So
Wow.
yeah, so he will be responsible for the West Coast. And it'll just be a lot easier for him to, have to travel less far and less frequently if he's already on that side of the country.
Totally. That is so cool. I just love that. I like that there's so much more, than the competing and the athletic side of you, obviously. And it's inspiring, and there's things that you've been able to accomplish and commit to because of your diligency as well. And I think that that's something a lot of girls a lot of athletes in general like to know is possible. Like, oh, I can still achieve things in my life, or I don't have to put competing on the back burner for it either. Or maybe if I do, it's okay too. And that's just awesome that you've been able to do those things.
Yeah, I'm excited because I feel like my patience has kind of paid off and like everything's coming together this year. So that's why I didn't, like want to rush into trying to compete like late this summer or something. Like when I'm just moving, I want to, make sure I'm settled in and really in a good spot to give 100% to my prep.
Definitely. And what did you get your master's in?
It's actually in environmental management.
Oh my gosh. So how did you get into what you're doing now?
Well, yeah, so I guess my my company command in the military was in a logistics company, so that's kind of how I had the experience when I got hired with Target in logistics. Yeah, environmental management is, I guess it's just nice to have a master's degree of some sort.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah, I just, had some logistics experience from the military and leadership experience. And I started out working for Target as an operations manager in one of their fulfillment centers, and then became a logistics business partner before I became a manager and senior manager at Target headquarters.
So I'm going to ask something personal. And if it's, you don't have to answer it, but I'm curious, like, if you growing up with a single mom who didn't have enough money to put you through college, and then you were able to take those leaps of faith for yourself and go to West Point and commit to serving in the military, which is also amazing. And I want to just say thank you and acknowledge you for that as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. And now you're here in this life that, you know, you said your patience has paid off. Did you ever think when you were, let's say, in high school or getting ready to find a college to go to, that you would be here?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I kind of always like I didn't expect to be a bikini competitor, but I expected to, you know, graduate from college and have, you know, what I would consider to be a successful career.
That's awesome. And was your mom a big influence on you growing up?
Definitely. Yeah. She was, she's a really, really great person. Like, just, she, ended up being a director for a nonprofit and has like, spent so much of her time and money just giving to other people. And I mean, you know, you're a director at a nonprofit, you don't make a ton of money.
Right.
So, yeah, but she really has a great heart.
That's amazing. I love that so much. I think that is just so cool. And I love too that you've always believed in yourself and you've always been like, this is what I'm going to do. You seem like someone who goes after what they want no matter what, which I think is awesome.
Thanks.
Of course. And is that something that you really want to like instill in Madison as well?
Yes, definitely. And, I mean, I feel like she's going to have my husband and I talked about this, like she's going to have a little bit more of a privileged upbringing than we did. And we don't want her to be spoiled. We want her to have to work for things. And, you know, not just think everything is going to be given to her, for sure.
Totally. You know, that's something I really appreciate that my parents did for me is I was super blessed and I recognize that I've been blessed and I've had a lot of privilege, but also so appreciate that my parents made me work for the things that they gave me or provided for me and never let me forget that they had to, you know, what they had to go through and what their parents had to go through so that we could all experience life. So,
well, it definitely turned out well for you.
Yeah, exactly. It did. I'm so grateful. It's amazing. And that's how life is. When we actually commit and go after what we want to, I think that's what gives us the opportunity to see what's really possible, like you've done with your career and like you've done with now your family as well. And then, of course, competing. And you guys travel a lot too, don't you?
Yeah, we did. We were supposed to go on vacation in April to Turks and Caicos, but now that's moved back to maybe September.
Well, that'll be amazing when you do.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm excited to be able to travel again.
Yeah, no, me too. Our trip to Colorado was canceled, and then I'm like, okay, I guess we'll see what's next. Although I don't know when we'll travel again, but now I'm like, I'll just travel when I compete. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on to the show and sharing so much. And I always love to hear if you have anything like of advice that you would give for someone who's never competed before but would like to compete, and then advice for someone who's on their road to pro.
For someone who hasn't competed before but would like to, I would definitely advise like going to watch a show before you do, just because I think it'll be inspiring. You'll kind of get more of a realistic view of like how competitors actually look when they're stage ready. You'll understand like what is happening at a show, you know, when you're doing it. I didn't ever see a show in person before I competed, and so I was a little bit confused, like with the call outs, even like what was going on. And then like when I got my trophy, I thought you were supposed to hold it and didn't realize they like put it down on the floor. So, you know, just the little things. I think that'd be very helpful to, you know, go watch a show before you compete. And then for someone who's trying to turn pro, I would suggest like, I mean, don't wait forever to compete at your first national show, but do understand that like the level of competition is at those shows is like so many levels up from, you know, most regional shows. So you need to be ready to bring like the entire look, like plus the perfect conditioning, you know, everything in order to even be, you know, like considered for the top call out. Now, like the competition is so high. So, you know, don't just rush into it and expect to go pro. Like, you know what the standards are, and, you know, be ready to work like that hard for it, because you're really going to have to earn it.
Like you did.
Yeah, see, I could have done it in less shows if I had like really understood like what it took.
I love that. Like now you can, like, this advice is so perfect because you've been there. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I so appreciate that, and just your time as well. And I'd love for everybody to be able to, a lot of times people will tag as they listen and they'll share their main takeaways and things that they love. So if you could let them know where they can connect with you, that would be awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, I am on Instagram. It's liz.yisrael. Oh, I have to look what it is. liz.yisrael.ifbbpro. I don't even know what my own ID is.
That is awesome. I love that. You're probably the only person I know who doesn't know what their IG is. That's amazing. Well, I'll make sure I put that in the show notes page as well. So you guys know that's on celestial.fit/podcast, so that you can see everything there. We also have episode timestamps, so you'll be able to see everything that we talked about in this episode. Should you want to go back and listen to it again or find your little golden nuggets, they're going to be outlined there. And thank you guys again so much for listening. And Liz, thank you for coming on.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this podcast episode.